in a land of sugar, down in the south, a place where drinks runs free and cats lick their paws in this land, where the sand is as sweet as sugar, reigns the mighty Maine, Marandrew Joe of the Two Moons dance. Time is cruel, but precious, and since his birth, it was his right to rule the ancient pride and the disparate traditions of the Khajit. The southern tribe, the Palatine, respectful. They obeyed his authority and acknowledged him as a living embodiment of their unity. But alas, in the north, the proud and fractious Aniquians refused his authority, and their defiance would be a fester upon the land itself, and the schism would be more than mere politics, but a crack that left untended would shatter the High Kingdom. And there will be a divine mandate that to unite the disparate tribes before his inevitable collapse, and should he fail, the concept of a united Elsewhere would dissolve into dust, and it will be a catastrophic sundering, forever splintering the land into warring states, and the division would be a feast for jackals, and leave the Khajit vulnerable to the cold, ambitious gaze of imperial invaders to the north, and to the witty and opportunistic Bosmer to the west. And the weight of this destiny and the future of his entire species now rested upon the Maine's shoulders. We would open to the throne room of our current Maine a thoughtful and cautious Khajit. His expression would be of like a scholarly serenity that belies the storm of calculation. And he would look upon this map, and his fingers would steeple his claws, elongated. The map would be a source of quiet torment, or his Sutherlands would be a solid and comforting color, while the northern territories would be a chaotic mosaic. This kingdom, its configuration is a fragile and complexity. The current state is unacceptable and riddled with vulnerabilities. The variables are all out of place, and it is divided with unmanaged dependencies. My even own vassals now are considering to go rogue, and the external threats present call against our borders, and a single error could launch a large blast that could destroy our entire infrastructure. And I must create unity again, so I may continue to sip on some more sugar. The Maine was a scholar, a wise man whose potential in the arcane was acute. Not a warrior king who would solve problems with the blade, but would also take the task of reforging his empire quietly, meticulously as a craftsman. He would measure everything before he would make his first cut, and this caution was not born of weakness, but of an understanding of the consequences of failure. Our Maine would not hesitate, and he would despise unnecessary risk. But the providers for this project are ill-defined. Our faith of the twin moons, Joan and Jode. They give us purpose, but this is merely a high-level design, and my counsel is incomplete. And my heir needs to be named, for if I fall, the project will fail. He would softly give us clap, and he would summon a few trusted courtiers, and there will be a young bright-eyed Khajit who would be brought forward, and he would carry himself. The Maine's first act was to secure his future and to name a successor, and in the court he saw many with ambition, but few with the patience for true governance. and of those that he could select would be those born under the proper birth sign to inherit the kingdom. And he saw in this young Khajit a zealous empath with a masterful mind, a worthy successor to carry the project should he fail. He would not choose a warrior who would rush, but a builder who would understand it. Step forward, young one. The strength of a wall is not in its height, but in its foundation. How do you propose to strengthen elsewhere itself? The young Khajit will bow. My mane, not with swords, but with granaries. Not with conquest, but with trade. A full belly and a heavy coin breeds more loyalty than 1,000 banners. And we must build from within so that our strength becomes an undeniable truth. And the mane would nod and give a flicker of approval. You will be my heir. And we will let the moons bear witness. And the Khajit would bow and accept the honor. And next, on to the manner of business, the mane would summon a physician who would move with a quiet confidence, in his eyes holding the wisdom of 1,000 ailments seen and cured. The mane understood that a kingdom needed a foundation of health, and a plague would undo his works. He would call upon the physician for not only his own well-being, but to ensure the resilience of the realm. Physician, what is the state of our health? Stable, my mane, for now. The usual sicknesses ebb and flow. However, I received troubling reports from the quarter. It is a persistent cough, a resilient fever that resists common poultices. It is an anomaly that I will be monitoring closely. The mane would give a nod, his eyes narrowing, for this was the second piece of troubling land data. Another place in drift, an unknown health variable that will require monitoring. Soon a scout would approach next and whisper to the mane. My mane, word from the northern border, the Imperials build new fortifications. It's not the work of raiders, but the work of an army. Resources, hostile changes. I cannot act on this now, it is outside of the scope. We will monitor their actions for now, for I must focus on my economy. Or even the immediate borders of the Aniquians. But without it, all other actions will collapse. And as his council would come and convene, he would seek power along the magical arcanes. He would need a way to extend his own timeline and grant himself more time. And as he would look in his private study, he will be meditating and thinking deeply, as he would soon launch his own campaign against his enemies. He would embrace a long spell of exuberance that would grant him a healthier life, so that his lead architects will not vanish before the work is done. The ports must be expanded. The cost must be done, and it is a long-term increase. It will pay for all of our endeavors. This investment in our core infrastructure will not only extend the life of our people, but also increase gold. I need you to work on that for us. As the mane approaches the map room, now joined by his council, he would gesture them to be silent. My mane, a bold strike at the heart of the Aniquians would show our strength. Let us march on Orcas and force their allegiance. Foolish. The mane would think. He sees glory while I only see risk. The plot there would return many failures. For I know they are currently collecting together, and the blast will be uncontrollable. We must be precise and clean. No, we will not strike the hornet's nest. The mane will point back onto the map. We remove the spider from its web and the cultists of the dark pool. Them, my mane? They are nothing. Exactly. They are an anomaly. And we must correct them before we proceed with the main script. They pollute our lands with their presence and offer us an opportunity. And this plan should work well. The cult is an isolated force, their military weak. Should be a simple destruction operation, followed by a forceful application. And the state change will be predictable and contained, and will test our organized forces. Raise the levies. We march on the cultists and erase this error from the map. It will not be a grand declaration, but a quiet command, confirming the change. The Scholar King would finish his planning and apply his grand work. The Main's campaign was a masterpiece, and as predicted, the cult of Molan Bao was erased from the map. And the neighboring duchy, faced with the swift and overwhelming force, would bend the knee, and the apply was a resounding success. And Mirandru Joe's configuration of Elsewhere was expanding, and the state file of the world would reflect his power. But this system was not closed, and while the Main was busy committing to his plans, there were other architects running plans of their own. We would open into his war tent as a force would charge in. My Main! It is war, and the dour clans of the north march upon our borders, and they claim your ambition threatens their sovereignty. This one did not foresee this, no. Mirandru Joe saw the possibility, but judged it unlikely. This drift is a change to the world state made by another. Their best warriors, this one's finest resources, will commit to garrisoning these new lands and lock the state. For this one cannot easily redeploy to meet this new threat. The Dow War would be a severe complication in his grand plans, but the Main was equipped to understand that when followed, however, that no map could predict, a foe that no army could fight. It would begin in the camps and in the crowded quarters, a cough that respected no banner and spared no soul. Khajit soldiers would fall from both sides, and the tents would overflow, and the funeral pyres would rise. For the great pox was indiscriminate and tore through the dour clans with the same ferocity it unleashed upon the Main's old soldiers. And the war was grim and grinding, and a battle not of maneuver but of attrition. And the greatest victor was death itself. And the plague would breach the walls and strike at the heart of the Main. The Main, locked in his chambers, would be slumped. A sheen of feverish sweat would cover his fur, his breathing ragged, and his physician working frantically. My Main, you must rest. This one has tried every remedy, every poultice. The pox has a deep hold. The system is failing. Freaks the Main, a critical error. All plans, all strategies, they depend on me being operational. This is not a bug, but a corruption. The usual remedies are deprecated, and Mirandru Joe must find another way. We must override this. He would push the remedies away and would channel his own magicka, and would try to fight against this sickly aura. For Mirandru Joe, this was the ultimate test. He would learn that his life was not just his own, but the single central point for the entire kingdom, and that failure would cascade and end the dream of a united Elsewhere. And he would turn inward, using his knowledge of the arcane to launch a desperate attempt at repair, and he would battle the plague with his own life force as the final firewall against a total failure. and as he works his magics, the courtier will enter with a mask of tragedy. My mane, forgive this one's intrusion. It is the pox. It has claimed the air. He is gone. And the golden light around the mane would flicker violently, and for a moment his control would waver and the fever would surge. My heir. The result of this plague is great loss, and my chosen variable has been removed. A wise steward, this one thought him the perfect choice, but the moons, they do not care for this one's choice. In succession, this system is not what this one believed. It's not about a single heir. It is a pool. Joan and Joe decide who is in this pool. This one merely chooses from the list they provide. And in his fevered state, a calamity of clarity would strike the mane, for he had been a fool. He had focused on grooming the perfect successor when the Khajit way was fundamentally different. The heir was not a child to be raised to rule, but a candidate to be chosen from those blessed by the moons at birth. This is a double-edged claw. This one is not dependent on a single bloodline, and if the pool is strong, this one can choose the best, and if the pool is weak, this one must choose the least flawed. And this process is unpredictable, therefore Marandrew Joe cannot choose the perfect heir. He must perfect the throne they will inherit, and the kingdom itself must be flawless, and it must be so well created and architected that even a fool could run it. This changes it all. And this realization would be the anchor in the storm, and his purpose would not just be to survive for his own state, but to survive and finish the work, and build a kingdom so stable that the flaws of any future mane would be irrelevant. And this was the true result, the output of his suffering. And it will be a new unshakable philosophy. And with his final disparate surge of will, the mane will launch a brilliant, pure light, and it will push back the plague. He would collapse, his breathing shallow, but now steady, and the fever broken. For the mane had survived against all odds and would pull himself from the brink, and the plague would eventually recede, leaving behind the scars. And the pestilence would fade, but the war would come back into focus. Both armies were ravaged, but the mane would be armed with a new purpose, and would see the path of victory. The mane would direct his forces on the map, and he would use various feints and traps, and would eventually win with precision in exploiting the enemy's weaknesses. And the North once again would be pacified, and he would return to his capital and summon the new lists. This one, he is a fool, but an honorable one. His skills are poor, but his heart is loyal. This one can work with this. He will be the new heir. The crisis has passed, and the apply is complete. And though filled with many errors, the output is clear that this one has survived. The land is larger, but the output, the value that should be passed on all future projects, is that this one cannot control the moons. This one cannot control fate. But we can only control the infrastructure. And the state of this kingdom will be so perfect that it will survive any heir. And it will survive any calamity. This Marandrew Joe swears. Victory can be deceptive. It can breed arrogance. A common belief is that a plan is often perfect, but the mane had learned a harsher lesson in the fires of the pox In the grit of the Dow War, he learned that victory is temporary, and the players in the great game are fleeting, and even the most perfect of heirs could be erased by the indifference of fate. And he would not emerge from these trials with more pride, but a better understanding of his role. He was not a king to be succeeded, but a mason that would build a kingdom that would outlast the concept of kingship. And in his halls, the Maine would of course look upon his building plans to rise his lands from the ground up, and he would put this practice into effect. And the treasury that he had won would not be hoarded but reinvested, and there would be trade ports, walls, and the halls of the Colossus would rise in his domain. For it would be a node in his network that would bring stability and efficiency to the realm. We would shift now to the training grounds as his heir would spar with the knights. He is earnest but lacks the killer instinct of the strategic mind. And a concerned advisor would speak with the Maine. This one sees your choice, my Maine, but has worries. He is loyal, but his mind is simple. Can such a Khajit truly hold the kingdom you are building? He still sees the old ways, the Maine thinks. He sees a king, not a system, and he worries about the value of a variable. He does not see the elegance, for this one is not the plan, but he is merely the placeholder. He is loyal and predictable, and this is acceptable, for he bears the Maine born under the correct moon. For the strength will not reside in the variable, but it will reside in the code itself. He will reply with a calm demeanor. This one does not need the heir to be a great warrior, but to be a faithful steward. The kingdom will provide the strength. You see a weak cub, but this one sees a stable component. Go and establish the new ranks, and we will fund the buildings well, for the quality of our knights will be a function and not the whims of our kingdom. And in his doctrine, the Maine would abstract power away from individuals and embed it into the institution. The military would be strong not because of a legendary commander, but because the structure would be sound. The economy would be strong not because of a province, but because of its network of effects. He would replace hard-coded dependencies with a flexible state of driven variables, and it would extend beyond his own borders. It will be in various local events, marriages, or even games, that the Maine would eventually sit in the land of Seatwell, the Bosmer-ridden kingdoms, against a human ruler, playing a game. He would not be playing aggressively, but he would be moving pieces and speaking in Cicero's tongue, which Maine would still be learning. You build alliances through friendships, Maine. That is unusual. Most of your kind would not seek to bind others through friendship, or let alone even converse with our kind. The Maine would reply, the moons choose the heir for this one. Marriage is for love, not for contract. And friendship, a bond between two who understand the burdens of the crown. This has a strength that no contract can match. And I value a trustworthy neighbor. This one cannot produce heirs. To secure his borders, it is unavailable. And a hard-coded alliance is impossible. So Marandrew Joe must create a dynamic link. Cicero is not just a friend, but a variable of immense importance. And by securing this friendship, the threats to our southern border will be null. And this will free up some resources and allow us to focus all our power onto our final objective, the North. And while the Maine built bridges, the ghost of his old conquest would linger, and there would be in rare moments that the Maine would go for a walk and see a fiery Khajit woman step before him, a daughter of a long-deposed duke or a count that he had disposed of in his first wars. You stole my father's land, you stole, Oathbreaker. This one's honor demands vengeance, and I challenge you. And the court's guard would move to intercept, but the Maine would raise his hand and would look at her with a detached curiosity like a scholar observing an insect. This is predictable noise from a decapitated resource. This is a minor validation failure, and the pain of the conquered is a byproduct of our command. She is not a threat. This one will ignore her. He would walk past her without another glance, leaving her fuming in rage, for he has already moved on. And as he fortified his kingdom, who knew the reliability of his system would depend on the stability of his administrators, and he would delve into the arcane and expand his own knowledge. And as he would decipher the text, he would eventually achieve clairvoyance, and he would attain the golden light of exuberance that would lead as an additional ward against the ravage of time. And he would expend his own life and heighten his own senses. He saw the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, and his kingdom would be stable, his military well-oiled. Independent of any single leader, the southern border would be secured, and the time for caution was over, and it would be time to complete his grand act. This one has refactored the state of elsewhere, and our foundations are no longer brittle. We are no longer dependent on hard-coded values. We are dynamic. We are resilient. This one could die today and the kingdom would not falter. King Cicero could turn on this one and the South would hold. These final resources need to be accomplished, and the plan will be complete. There are no unknown variables. This one's no longer a war, but the final line of script. And the goal of the campaign was met, for this one had stabilized the kingdom. It is time to apply. And with that word, the final war would begin. It would be launched without fanfare, anger, or fear. It was an inevitable conclusion of a perfect plan, for the Maine had survived many plagues and wars, and had outmaneuvered fate by not being the strongest, but by being the wisest. He had not become a machine, but an effective ruler, a master of his people. And the saga would end here, as the empire he had designed would now be secured for future generations.